Greetings, distinguished followers, Chosen Chimp here, hoping you are all doing well and continuing to wish everybody a happy Pride Month for the month of June and beyond. Here we are, the end, sort of, the penultimate episode of this series of Doctor Who, and the second to last video that I will make reviewing this series and asking those two important questions. Question number one, does the episode I'm watching have a clear and consistent personality of its own? And question number two, was I bloody entertained? So here we are, this is the big one. I mean, I more often than not get slightly more excited about the penultimate episode of a series of Doctor Who than I do about the final series, because I know through learned experience that that is kind of the most exciting one of the series. The payoff is all fun and games, but the build to the payoff is often what I consider to be the most effective. You know, looking back at the only Christopher Eccleston series, the penultimate episode of that, the second series that was the first series with David Tennant, the penultimate episode of that, to me they are really just exciting and, you know, kind of almost adrenaline driven. And there have been a few other examples that didn't concern Russell T Davies, like the penultimate episode of Series 5, the Pandorica Opens. Great stuff, and the job of the final episode is to deliver on the established rush and the established clout of the build-up, which kind of more often than not will lead to this big crushing reveal at the end. And I am pleased to state that this particular episode, The Legend of Ruby Sunday, was no exception in this regard. But of course you know that already, otherwise why would you be watching this video? I am about to absolutely chop up this episode to the best of my ability, and if you haven't seen The Legend of Ruby Sunday and you want to see it, then for goodness sake, stop watching this video, get right away from YouTube, whatever you do, watch it, and then come back and then watch this review, and then just like disable your Wi-Fi for the week until it is time for another Chosen Chimp review. So this episode I had a bit of a difficult time trying to put together a review for. When I was reviewing Dot and Bubble and Rogue and Boom and The Devil's Cord, it was pretty easy for me to pull together all of my thoughts. I was pretty confident going into my studio to talk about the episode, knowing what I was going to say and when I was going to say it. This time around, I'm kind of more driven just to turn the camera on and see what comes out, because for some reason I couldn't quite fully pull all my thoughts together on what I thought of this particular story. And there could be a number of reasons for that. Reason number one could be that there is just so much crammed into this episode, so many plot points, a lot of different things happening in different locations, all seemingly disconnected, a lot for you to absorb and take in and remember. Also, unfortunately, I just kind of, well, I knew what was coming because the internet, you know, like even Radio Times blew the lid off this one. There was a big reveal that there is going to be a Tales from the TARDIS. We all know what episode that they are going to Tales from the TARDIS now. And that was basically spoiled in the Radio Times, and they gave a reason why they thought it was this. And it's the big reveal at the end of this episode. So I knew what was coming, and I'd love to peek into some kind of alternate reality where I was completely blind to what this reveal was going to be, and if I was, would I have appreciated the ride that much more? However, I mean, we all love Doctor Who. We all love our favourite Doctor Who episodes, and we watch them time and time again. And it's only a surprise one time. So that one time is expired. It's gone. Whenever I watch The Legend of Ruby Sunday now, I know what's coming, so I can view it in a more sort of objective, benefit of hindsight sort of way. So that's two reasons why I was a bit kerfuffled on reviewing this. And the third, and probably the biggest, is that this is only half an episode, really. Let's face it, it's part one of two. There were lots of questions going into this. None of those questions have been answered, and more questions have been raised in the process. So getting to next week, there's a lot of stuff to cram in to that one episode runtime. So there's quite a bit of pressure on this finale to deliver, and I really hope it does. The one thing I will say about Legend of Ruby Sunday, and as I will get into in a minute, it is not without its faults, but the one thing I will say in terms of pacing and excitement, this episode, it's an easy 10 out of 10. Straight up to 10 out of 10 in terms of excitement and pacing and the ability to hold the viewer and take them for a ride and keep them in suspense and put them on a roller coaster and gradually ramp up the heart-stopping journey to the reveal, just the increasing intensity of the rhythm, of the editing, of the sound, of the emotional response of the characters. Russell T Davies has proven in the past that his stories, he is excellent. He is excellent at doing this, and he has got the resume to show it in Doctor Who. There is absolutely no time wasted. Not a single scene is there to serve any other purpose than to create the right amount of tension and the right adrenaline rush and just the right tempo of the beating of the heart to get you to this end point, this end twist, this end reveal that blows the entire lid off the big bad of this series. If this episode can be compared to a piece of music, the composition, the orchestral arrangement of it is absolutely masterclass. Here we go, it's Unit. The Doctor has returned and he is wearing some rather badass garb for this. He is wearing Eccleston leathers. I love this idea that the Doctor dresses differently for every occasion, that he doesn't have a generic costume. It's new and it's a break from tradition, and to me it's the right kind of break from tradition. Every scenario he is in, he immerses himself in by dressing the part, which I think is very clever. And as I've said before, I think it was in my Church on Ruby Road video actually, that it tells you a lot about this type of Doctor, that he likes to just constantly change his wardrobe. It feeds into his personality. He's wearing this badass leather jacket and this plain white t-shirt and these equally badass black leather trousers, and it's this kind of what you would wear if you were marching into war and you wanted to look cool about it. So that's great, I love that. And he gets out the TARDIS and he has a big reunion with Kate Lethbridge and Rose Noble, Yasmin Finney, reprising her role as Rose Noble. Great to see her back. Great to see her again. However, it does prompt me to reassess one of my nuanced verdicts of the giggle a little bit, and that is the fact that the bi-regeneration, as much as I loved it at the time and as much as I liked the fact that David Tennant's Doctor got the retirement he deserved, to me he's just become a bit of a narrative loose end now. Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor says, "How's the uncle?" and that's the only nod, because this is not a situation where they have time in the story to remind audiences any deeper of the fact that there is another Doctor just roaming around in retirement. And I'm sorry, it doesn't matter how much conviction David Tennant's Doctor had when he said he was going to retire. There is no way that he is going to stay out of this. David Tennant's Doctor, the Doctor that we have journeyed with so much on so many occasions, there is no way he is not going to express intrigue at even the smallest detail of this. There is no way that he is going to get in touch with his honorary niece, Rose Noble, and ask what the heck is going down at UNIT, and then subsequently turn up himself to find out what's going on. It's in his nature to be drawn to it. And I think that if he was, imposed to retire, to live the good life like a normal person, I think he'd just get depressed. I think he'd, put on the corona pounds. It would be like living in lockdown. He'd just get depressed and he'd want to come in and save the world. So that kind of frustrates me that that's there in the periphery of this story. But I am going to have to do what the story is encouraging me to do and just forget about the whole thing. So the Doctor is introduced to some new friends too. We've got Harriet, head of the archives. We have Maurice Gibbons, the new scientific advisor. Shirley Bingham is set to return at some point. So that isn't really explained, but apparently it will be at some stage. So Maurice Gibbons, played by Lenny Rush. And we also have the return of Colonel Ibrahim. Yeah. And the Vlinks as well, voiced by Nicholas Briggs. Good to have Nicholas Briggs on board as well. So the UNIT team all cemented all their great stuff. And the Doctor is there because he is requesting help to find out who Susan Twist is, basically. She has been scattered throughout time, as we know. And now he's asking UNIT to help him find out why. There's a bit of a jump in the narrative there because he and Ruby have acknowledged in previous episodes that this woman keeps appearing at various points in their adventures. He didn't really express an active desire to find out why that is in previous episodes, nor did he specifically express a decision to ask for UNIT's help. Not sure why he'd ask for UNIT's help specifically. I was trying to get my head around that. There is quite a lot of narrative convenience in this story. There are a lot of things positioned to bring the story to the right resolve and the right closure and the right kinds of plot twists. And some of them are questionable in the sense that why exactly were the characters driven to do this, other than the fact that they needed to because the plot needed to go in that direction. But here we are. It is what it is. It's cool that he is with UNIT for the penultimate episode because it's a big military complex, and that is the kind of big guns explosiveness you need for an explosive finale, just like the Torchwood thing with the Cybermen and the Daleks and the Genesis arc. So I guess it makes sense aesthetically, but I'm not quite sure why he'd ask UNIT specifically. And so yeah, Susan Twist, he shows the images of her in various episodes, and there are also a couple of new additions, one of which is her being a Borg. Yeah, I bet you guys who watch my Cybermen videos enjoy that. I read the comments. And also the Night King from Game of Thrones. Obvious nods to other TV shows. A Star Trek nod, blatant. A Game of Thrones nod, blatant. Entertaining enough. Strange. Very good prosthetics. I think mixed with a bit of CGI. I don't know how long Susan Twist was in makeup for those. Seems very elaborate for a couple of very quick shots that don't really massively serve the story, but here we are. So Unit just go, yeah, haha, we're one step ahead of you. We've already been monitoring Susan Triad, as is her real name, because she is at a conference today where she will be transmitting live the announcement and the reveal of a new software that will be distributed around the world globally. A gift from Triad. That's nice. Reminds me of the international electronics thing with Tobias Vaughan in The Invasion. For one fleeting second, I thought maybe there will be Cybermen. Nicholas Briggs. No, I was way off. S-Triad, anagram for TARDIS. I knew it, you knew it, and we also knew it was going to be a red herring. And they call our bluff on that straight away. Because Colonel Ibrahim, who is self-declarative in, playing the meathead soldier role, says, even I got that one. But then the Doctor goes a layer deeper and goes, yeah, but it's Susan, which is also the name of my granddaughter. Boom. And the second reason why the Doctor's here, and surely these two things can't be connected in any way when they're crammed into one penultimate episode that is building up to a big mysterious reveal, is that he is trying to find out who Ruby's true biological mother is. And he does this by putting Ruby on the spot in a room full of strangers that she's never met before. Except Kate Lethbridge, who she may or may not remember, and in a big military complex. And then there's loads of baby pictures on the giant monitors glaring in her face. And then there's some newspaper clippings about an abandoned baby on December the 24th. 2004, which is her. So, I mean, yeah, not at all awkward, but here we are. So, in their possession, Ruby and Carla have a CCTV tape of the night that Ruby was abandoned as a baby on December 24th, 2004 on the church outside Ruby Road. And they dub this tape The Legend of Ruby Sunday. And Unit promise that if they get hold of this tape, they can clear it up and bring some clarity to the image. So the gears are in motion for that. And meanwhile, you find out Mel, Bonnie Langford, good to have you back, thank you for not screaming like you did in the 80s, has infiltrated the television crew who are rehearsing for Susan Triad's big live broadcast later in the episode where she will reveal this software. And as it turns out, she's a perfectly nice, normal woman. Her dad was a postman, her mum was a dinner lady. Well, there you go, that's that, ironclad. So Ruby and Carla leave the house, and Carla asks Miss Flood, another loose end for you, who just keeps coming back when there's already quite a lot of stuff going on already. She asks her to come in and look after her mum, which I thought was extremely sus. Why would you do that? And straight away, as soon as they leave, Miss Flood immediately denies Carla's mum a cup of tea when requested. And then she just warns her about asking things and looks out the window, prophesizing a big storm and saying, "He who waits no more is waiting no more," or something like that. And then that's the end of that. So no more to say on that. We'll find out next week. But that's just, don't leave your elderly mother with a strange neighbour. Yeah, I don't know. I thought Carla was more responsible than that. So how am I doing so far ad-libbing this episode? There's just so many notes, like so many things that I have to kind of remind myself that's happened, these two narratives going on at once. Mel shaking hands with Susan Triad, and that's how they find out after running through the scanner that she is actually 100% human. And Kate Lethbridge brings up the point that it might be a chrysalis thing, that there is something hiding inside what appears to be human. You've also, that's kind of the one side of it, and then you've got this other side, which is the Ruby Sunday mystery. The Doctor saying these brilliant, fascinating, very Doctor Who-ish lines, like how he says that he's locked himself out of the arrival of baby Ruby. He's time locked himself out of that because he appeared there once already, and that moment in time is so raw and so open that every time Ruby thinks about it, it starts to snow, and that is something he doesn't dare mess with. I love that. Anyway, this CCTV tape, they get it and they use it in conjunction with this bit of technology that UNIT have invented called a time window, which the Doctor has told them they're not allowed to build, but he knows full well that they have anyway. So they go into the time window, and there's this moment where he bursts out laughing at how crap and primitive it is, which is just pure Doctor Who goldust. I love that bit so much. Ncuti Gatwa continuing to blow my mind with his performance of the Doctor. I still find it impossible to pick a fault with this guy, honestly. And so begins a marvellously effective and suspenseful segment of this episode, where they combine the data provided by this VHS cassette and run it through the time window, which is a piece of technology whereby they can go back to certain points of time to create a kind of 3D immersive reenactment of what was going on at that point. A very primitive, very rudimentary form of time travel. It's humanity's first attempt at trying to break the laws of time, and it's flipping rubbish compared to what a Time Lord can do, and the clunkiness of that, I think, is very clever and very, if you like, authentic and realistic. So they merge all these different components together in what is basically a slightly rubbish holodeck, and recreate the moment at the church on Ruby Road where this mysterious woman in a hood delivers baby Ruby to the church, and immediately this person seems to bug out and resist the programming of this simulation that she has been brought into. She kind of phases out through the Doctor and Ruby and kind of jumps on the other side. This whole scene is marvellously suspenseful. It's brilliant. I love the way that the Church on Ruby Road thing was shrouded in mystique in the episode Church on Ruby Road, like it was this arcane, ghostly, haunting moment that exists in this forbidden pocket of time. But now this military organisation has the opportunity to rip it out of its time zone and chop it up and dissect it. I think the merging of two different styles works really well. I just love the way it's kind of held under the scientific microscope, like it's science desperately trying to get its head around this mystical, almost magical moment. Just the entire concept and the way it's delivered works for me, and I think this is definitely one of the strongest moments of the episode. And I'm also going to have to jump ahead here and say that the Chosen Chimp is proud to present this week's edition of Unit Doing Stuff. Today, Colonel Winston Shadozy. Colonel Winston Shadozy is the head of Time Window Security. A colonel. Okay, you don't just throw that title around. Colonel is what Brigadier was when we first met him in the Web of Fear. So he's a colonel. And within 12 minutes of being introduced to the head of Time Window Security, this poor fella gets lost in a hell dimension. And his soul is looked into, and then when he comes back, he's a pile of ash on the floor with an agonised expression on his face. Yeah, just steer clear of ever joining UNIT. Anyway, so it starts to bug out pretty much immediately, and as soon as they get into this simulation, and the hooded woman points directly. They're trying to work out what she's pointing at, and she can't have been doing that originally in the original timeline. That was something new that happened when the Doctor appeared, which means the history has changed, the video has changed, and that is when the entire time window starts to overheat and everyone starts panicking. The suspense is ramping up, but the big bombshell is yet to come, because after they supposedly finish the simulation and Ruby rather tearfully calls for the hooded woman, who is not revealed in any shape or form, so yeah, absolutely zero closure on that whatsoever. It is then that this strange black and red mist starts to appear and swirl around on the exact same spot that the TARDIS was just moments ago in this simulation. Leading up to that moment, the Doctor says time is a memory and memory is time, so what is a memory of a time machine? And to be honest, my guess is as good as his, but we don't have much time to dwell on that because the whole thing just goes kaboom in what is probably the coolest explosion I've ever seen on a Doctor Who episode ever. The Disney budget coming into play there, there's a shatter, they're kind of, Ruby and the Doctor are sort of shielding from it as all these fragments of reality just blow past them and spatter against the glass doors, and you hear this boom, very cinematic. Great stuff, very exciting, the suspense continues to build. So, meanwhile, guess we better get back to the Susan Twist thing, as she is preparing to do her big speech. The Doctor decides that he has to see Susan Twist or Susan Triad, should I say, because he is currently operating under the theory that this might be his granddaughter regenerated. As we all know by now, this is simply another red herring. And he goes to her just as she is about to go live on air, and she blatantly rejects any knowledge of the Doctor. The Doctor immediately realizes that she's not the one. He looks at her, he shakes her hand, he gets that feeling or lack thereof, so he knows, and then he tries to confront her about the dreams, which she acknowledges by freaking out, and then she goes live on TV and dances like Theresa May. I don't know why that is in there. Oh yeah, there's a cool conversation that the Doctor has with Kate Lethbridge earlier in the episode where she is kind of talking about all the old adventures that he had with the Brigadier, and at no point in any of those adventures was there any mention of the Doctor having a granddaughter, and the Doctor says that he does not have kids, but he does have a granddaughter, and that's life of a Time Lord for you, which is fascinating and will be elaborated on at some point in the future. But yeah, I never looked at it that way, but that's interesting. That's a nice bit of lore blown open, kind of faithful to the original lore by adding an extra dimension. I mean, that's kind of how you do it, Mr. Chibnall, with your 10 million previous Doctors. So Susan Triad comes out, she addresses her live global audience, and this is the point where the cat's out of the bag. I mean, there's no going back on it now. We all know what it is, surely, because the canned crowd noise that they feed in, they have abbreviated Susan technology, and they're going Sue Tech, Sue Tech, Sue Tech, and there you go. Not only are Ruby and the Doctor backstage trying to relay information with Kate Lethbridge, who in herself is in a bit of a kerfuffle because the TARDIS is making that noise again that it's been making throughout the series, but also you've got Harriet Arbinger, Miss H. Arbinger. Yeah, she suddenly just goes all Evil Deadish, and then everything goes Evil Deadish. She is poetically foretelling the arrival of a malevolent ancient god, at which point the Doctor can only ask which particular god is going to arrive. H. Binger, what was her name? Oh yeah, Harriet H. Arbinger, talks about the pantheon gods. She mentions the toy maker, she mentions Maestro, a load of others that we've yet to meet. Take a note on that. I can't remember any of them offhand. And everything starts to bug out. The teleprompter starts to bug out. The black mist swirls around the TARDIS. Susan Triad is freaking out. It is all building and coming together marvelously to create this huge bombshell, which is delivered in the form of a word on a screen, which is how Russell T Davies likes to convey big twists. Reputably, Bad Wolf, Professor Yana. It got me thinking with the Professor Yana thing. You are not alone. Why was he called Professor Yana? Why? I mean, I know why, because the initials were You Are Not Alone, but that was something the face of Bo prophesied, so why was that his name when he was the prophecy? And the reason why, it's a visual aid, it's a visual cue. It's a way that Russell T Davies can communicate his complex ideas in an easy to digest manner. Well, thanks for that. There's no denying that it's Sutekh after that. I can't quite figure out if those visual aids are actually, if they actually work in the context of the TV show, if they are in any way plausible through the eyes of the characters. Why is it that all these words have appeared on screen? I mean, it kind of makes sense that the teleprompter is saying Sutekh over and over and over, because now Sutekh is in control and he is spreading his message. That's obvious, but the fact that all those bits come together and jumble up and do that, why? Why does a malevolent god transmit his power in that fashion, unless it's the TARDIS translating that for the benefit of the audience? I can't quite figure out how that is supposed to work within the confines of the TV show. I know that this is a series that kind of breaks the fourth wall and makes a mockery of the divide between real life and fictional narrative. I know that that has been the point to an extent, but to me, for him to use words to convey this twist again, it's almost like he's waving the script itself in front of your face. And again, this TARDIS anagram being a red herring is like, that's fine, but the actual thing itself was already spoiled for me on the internet. I knew that Sutekh was coming because people sussed it out. I didn't, because A, I'm just not that clever, I will humbly admit, and B, I choose not to look too deep into such details because I would rather be taken for the ride. I want to be completely clueless as to where it was going, which is why my heart sank a little bit when I knew that it was going in this direction. And then, you know, knowing that this reveal was delivered so effectively, because it was, you know, the build-up and the bombshell was in essence excellent. I just wish, I don't know what I wish, I just wish I didn't know. But I'll stop moaning, because the end of this episode was objectively brilliant. Susan Twist turns into this gnarly looking Evil Dead zombie, as does Harriet. And the giant Anubis dog god that embodies the malevolent evil of Sutekh appears wrapped around the TARDIS with all the gems, and I was kind of hoping that you'd get, I wonder what the new Sutekh looks like. We haven't seen him since he was sat in that chair in the Pyramids of Mars. But again, like the Pyramids of Mars, the first time that you see a hint of Sutekh is when Sarah Jane Smith and Tom Baker's Doctor are in the TARDIS, and that kind of Anubis dog's face appears in the TARDIS, and then you get the reveal of Sutekh. So you can bet your bottom dollar we're going to see the actual Sutekh in the next episode. And when she's a gnarly Evil Dead zombie, she turns the floor manager to dust. To be continued. Firstly, bringing back Sutek. Love it. Love the idea of this. Only ever featured in one story, Pyramids of Mars. Tom Baker's Doctor was absolutely terrified of Sutek in that particular story. He sold the malevolence of this creature like it was something that should have been the main villain of Doctor Who. So clearly Russell T has acknowledged that and is bringing Sutek back, and this is so cool, man. I love the idea of this character coming back, because if you know, they're going to do the Tales from the TARDIS with Pyramids of Mars. Pyramids of Mars is a fantastic Doctor Who story. Sutek is so evil and so wicked and so devoid of any naffness or niceness or any kind of cheesy trope. He is just this pure, malignant, evil presence that does not falter or break. The greatest, most wonderful, awesome character in the history of television, Ibrahim Namin, pledges his life to Sutek, and Sutek has no bones whatsoever about basically burning him because he's outlived his usefulness. He's just a jerk. He's horrible. He is where nice things go to die. He is the god of death. You know, so I am very excited for this finale. And on that note, why was the hooded woman pointing at the Doctor? What was the software that was to be distributed globally? What's the deal with Susan Triad as a person? Did Susan Triad and the Harbinger know that they were possessed all along? What's with the Storm? What's with Miss Flood? Will we get any resolution on Ruby's mum? Why did the Doctor send her to the time window? Is there still a mystery fourth wall breaking thing going on that we saw in the Devil's Cord? There's a lot to cover in this finale in next week's episode, and they have to cover it because I'm sorry, I'm going to be really frustrated if any of this is left over until another series. I'm sorry, I just will be. I mean, one or two things, maybe, okay? I can live with them not revealing Miss Flood. She has no place in this as far as I'm concerned. She's long term. They cannot waste a single minute in this finale. Really, this build-up has been so interesting and the stakes are so high. And the only thing rushing through my head right now is this big cloud dust that is sweeping through the city as seen in the trailer. This is the most non-evergreen video in the history of YouTube, because in exactly 1 week's time, all of these questions that I'm asking will be addressed, and we will find out if this finale does deliver on the promise that has been issued to the audience in the form of all of these mysteries. And whilst I welcome the idea of a long-term game being played across this new era of Doctor Who, I don't want this to be one of those things where you are still completely in the dark at the end of the series and you have to wait until another series, because that means it tricked you in the wrong way. It means it tricked you into believing that you are going to get resolution in the finale for this series, but in fact you're gonna have to wait. And I find that a real scold to the audience when TV shows do that, and I really, really hope that this isn't one of those instances that we get a nice, satisfactory, hearty, fulfilling finale. So I think my review is going to have to end there. Did this story have a clear and consistent personality of its own? I think so. Was I entertained? Yes, but as I said at the beginning, this is only half of the story. It really does hinge on where we are going next. But I adore some of the concepts. I love the idea of Sutek coming back, and I think the delivery and the build mechanically was perfect. I worry and I fear that too many questions have been raised and too many mysteries have been implemented, and as a consequence, there is too much stuff going on at once, and it will implode under the weight of its own narrative. But we will see. I would like you to disregard everything I have said. Get in the comments and tell me what you thought of the Legend of Ruby Sunday. Be nice to each other, please. And while you're there, check out my Patreon. Distinguished follower, £1 a month. You can request Doctor Who stuff for me to talk about. Helps me out, and yeah, just hope you can join me. In the meantime, please do enjoy your week. I know the suspense is killing me too, but we don't have to wait too much longer, and yeah, next week it's a finale. Here we come. Boom. Let's have it. Until then, please, for goodness sake, have a good one.